review the reports, and for the most part, they're the same as Fall 1. So we have this legend to help you understand the reports and how they are linked to each other. So all the orange reddish colored reports are those that have to be opened up, clicked on, should be reviewed in order to certify, right? There's functionality that if you don't open these reports and review them, or at least open them, you can't get the approval button to show up. Data, the information is going to be in the blue reports or the blue icons, because that provides the student level data. For more than just counts, they provide you names, program data, services data, outcomes. You want to really certify early and provide, if you're going to give your reports or you're going to review the reports with your SEDS data coordinator, 16.1, 16.2, and 16.3 go hand in hand, right? Because you want to see, you want to be able to fine tooth comb through the students' records from 16.3 to understand the counts presented on 16.1 or 16.2. So although functionality is restricted by a few reports, you want to make use of all the reports. So report 16.1, students with disability education plan by primary disability count. Report has been unchanged for 5 years now, I think. You have your primary disabilities listed in the header, and the count of students with each of those disabilities and their plan type. So you can see column 3 is the plan type. They may have AFSPs as well, whatever the different plan types, and just how many students with a disability are being served by that plan type. Then report 16.2, students with disabilities count by federal setting. Again, this relates to that least restrictive environment. That's why you see at the far right, you have general education participation range codes, right? Because general education would always be the least restrictive environment. And then you have your different special education setting codes across the top. Then you have column 3 again. It was in the header of 16.1 is the primary disability. So you have the count with this particular primary disability and the setting that they're in, and then the count of how many students with that setting are going to be in 40% or less general ed, 40 to 80% general ed, and then 80% or greater. Then report 16.3, students with disabilities. This is the list. This is when we talk about the meat of the data, the information provided. You have your students' names, and you have the program information, education plan type, services. And again, remember, these are only for either initial or the most recent plan review meeting or annual meeting type. Any students whose eligibility was determined to continue and has a 40 or formerly called a triennial, those records are not going to be presented. So please keep that in mind. Report 16.5, students with disabilities, student services. So, you have a list of the different services. You have the code and the name here. Then the primary disability across the top. So you can see how many students have this primary disability and what services are being provided for that student as far as their education. This is a good report to do accountability to make sure that students with similar disabilities receive similar services. That's not a rule, of course, but that's what one would expect. And then moving on to 16.6, students with disabilities, student services, student list. Again, this is the detail. This is not the count. This is the information behind those counts. So it lists every student service record related to a meeting within this academic year. You have, the particular service information like service code, service provider, location, frequency, duration. And then you have information from that relevant program meeting, the SPED record, and that's located down here, 19 through 26. Is all coming from the SPED record, not the service. So it's a more extensive report, similar to the 16.6 and 16.3 are similar to the student profile reports, the 8.1 type reports. Then you have students with disability program exits. This is not in fall one. This is only for end of year. And these are just the students' first account of students who have exited the special education program. And then the different reasons, which are special education program exit reason codes. So a lot of times these are students who are continuing on with their education, but are no longer eligible for special education services, right? So you have those that, are no longer eligible. That probably came from an eligibility or triennial meeting, maximum age, students that age out. Then you have those who just withdraw for whatever reason, no longer want to receive the services they were once receiving, and then no parent can sit to Part C or Part B, right? That's your special education plans. So you have your different reasons. And then remember, I guess when we're going back here, remember that students who drop out of school they don't lose their eligibility. Therefore, they don't need to be exited in the special education program. They should be appropriately exited if they're determined to be a dropout or they stop their K through 12 education in the student enrollment record. Students with disability program exit student list, 16.10, right? That's again, the detailed report provides specific student information in the most recent program record, the one with the exit reason on it. It supports 16.9. And then the PSTS reports, there's just two of them, post-secondary survey outcome for students with disability. Very similar to fall 2. You have your status code and the total count for students who have been reported with that code. And remember, a student can have multiple post-secondary statuses. 16.11, students with disabilities annual comparison report. 17.4 is the student detail for 17.3. So that's, a status. And then a change, which you should know, is previously last year, if they didn't respond to a CTE survey for fall 2, for those students who are students with disability and also were CTE completers, we didn't allow you to report, or it was great difficulty to report a survey for EOY 4. That's no longer the case. But regardless of how they report it for their CTE survey, you have a separate survey, you can add information to that was previously reported. So that's something to note. Then, I'm sorry, going back to 16.11, students with disabilities annual comparison report, 16.11. This was added, I think, 2 years ago. I remember training into it last year. It's just was added after the initial implementation of end of year 4. It was something that was provided through K-SMIS that the C2C didn't provide. So we're providing it now. You can see quite simply, it allows you to identify students from year to year or from one year to the next, different counts of students who have been identified as eligible for special education services.